When astronauts arrive to Mars in the hopes of colonizing it, they discover that this isn't the first time that people have been there. The night before the astronauts' departure on a trip to Mars, a party is being held for them, and Nicholas the bad guy is hoping to get laid one last time before he leaves. Sergei and Renee, the foreign astronauts, Phil and Luke, and Woody and Blake, the only married couple embarking on the journey together, will go in 2 teams. While Luke is waiting for Jim, another astronaut, to arrive at the celebration, his wife instructs him to speak with their son Bobby first. That Luke would be missed and inquires as to who will read to him in Luke's absence. After the party, Jim, Woody and Luke are having a good time when Jim mentions a woman named Maggie and everyone becomes really sad. A conversation between Jim and Luke reveals that Maggie was Jim's wife and also an astronaut. Jim and Maggie dreamed of going to Mars. Luke says he will be reading the same book in space every night that Bobby will read, so in a way they will read the book together. Luke claims that Jim and Maggie deserve to go to Mars more than anyone and he is upset that they won't get to. Jim says it's okay, but when Luke departs it is obvious that he is upset as well. Maggie fell ill when the time came and Jim withdrew from the Mars program to take care of her. 13 months later, Luke's squad, when Renee, Sergei and Nick arrived to Mars, one of their rovers saw a strange mountain. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that the mountain had a shining top, which led them to believe that it was made of ice. However, the mountain may also have a large water reserve below it. When Luke and the crew arrive at the mountain, they hear a strange signal in their headsets. They use a radio wave radar to study the mountain, and the readings show that the mountain is metal underneath the dust, not ice. They send the message to the World Space Station, where Woody, Terry, Phil and Jim are present. They let the station know that they will be heading out to explore the unusual mountain. When they bring the radar closer and use more power to obtain an exact reading, Luke believes there must be a mistake. As they do this, a powerful energy pulse emerges from the mountain and all of their instruments stop functioning. Then, a vortex forms and pulls everything in. Sergei, Renee and other people die when the tornado drags them in and moves like a sentient creature. After the tornado passes, Luke but not Nick survives, and where the mountain once stood, a massive metal face is revealed. Back on Earth, an emergency meeting is called due to the intense energy pulse from Mars, and after almost all communications have been lost, a video transmission is received that is barely functional but depicts a severely injured Luke saying that his team has been attacked and everyone on it is dead. Woody attempts to persuade the captain at the World Space Station to send a rescue mission for Luke, but the captain claims that Luke may already be dead and that they have no way of knowing if traveling to Mars is safe because all transmissions have ceased. Phil suggests that they could get data transmitted from one of the Saturn probes flying close to Mars and plan their mission accordingly, and the captain agrees. Since Jim has spent the most time preparing to fly to Mars and he and Maggie were the ones who devised the project, Woody informs the captain that the mission will only succeed if he pilots the spacecraft. Every Mars mission strategy. The crew of the Jim Woody ultimately gets the captain's approval after some hesitation. As Terry and Phil get closer to Mars, Phil creates DNA from sweets, and Jim shows up and consumes his candy. Jim is informed by Woody that the Saturn probe will pass quite near to Mars in the next hours, providing them with the information they need to land. 3 graves are seen in photos from the Saturn probe near the previous team's base camp. Terry counters Phil's assumption that Luke is still alive by explaining that there was no one left to bury him. They next examine the location where the energy was detected. They believe there is an issue since the source of the pulse is still generating the same pulse. As the probe is ready to land on Mars, tiny meteoroids begin to impact their craft and cause holes where air begins to seep. With the team's assistance, Woody plugs the holes from the inside and the outside. However, they are unaware that the fuel tanks have also been damaged by the meteoroids, so when they launch into Mars' atmosphere, fuel leaks out and an explosion destroys their ship, leaving them with no choice but to escape into space wearing only their suits. Tied to one another, they attempt to reach a refueling module in orbit around Mars from earlier missions, but it is farther away than they anticipated. Woody decides to fly full speed at the refueling module and tie a grappling gun wire to it in order to give the rest of the gang time to reach the module safely. He attempts the maneuver and succeeds in doing so, but overshoots himself and is left stranded in space. Jim and Woody both die as a result of Terry's devastation, and she demands that they save Woody. Because none of them have enough fuel in their jet packs, they are aware that it is not conceivable. Terry tries the rescue nevertheless, but Woody warns her to turn around and drive back before she runs out of gasoline and becomes stuck as well. Terry then makes an attempt to use the grapple gun to pull Woody back, but the cable is just barely too short to reach him. Terry says she's going to try again and come closer, but Woody understands she'll kill herself attempting to save him, so he takes off his helmet and gives his life to stop Jim. Terry and Phil were successful in setting down the refueling module on Mars. When they arrive at the previous mission's base camp, the majority of the equipment is still there. It is damaged but still reparable, so they may take it home with them. Luke attacks Jim as he discovers that plants are growing in the experimental greenhouse. Luke is in bad shape and believes that Jim is a hallucination, but Jim persuades him that this is reality by stating that he is reading a book that his son Bobby is also reading back on Earth. Luke settles down and instead of yelling that he murdered the rest of the crew, he tells them about how he spent a year surviving by cultivating plants in the greenhouse. Jim asks Luke what secret he's referring to, and Luke shows them a picture of the giant metal face, which turns out to be the famous face on Mars, which was previously seen from satellites but was mistakenly believed to just be a mountain. Luke claims that he survived and that he was spared for a reason, saying that he was spared to figure out the secret. Jim inquires about the signal Luke's crew heard while they were near to the face, and Luke responds that it was placed there by someone for them to see. Luke reveals that he has been analyzing the signal for a year and he's discovered how the physical parameters of the signal's pattern created the image of a DNA. He claims it is a self-portrait by the creatures that placed the face there, a proclamation of their identity, and a signature. When they are packing for the trip home, Jim spills some candies, which reminds him of his conversation with Phil, and he realizes the DNA image is not a signature but a test the beings want them to fill in the last pair of chromosomes to prove that they are human. The face attacked Luke's team because the radio waves from their radar were misinterpreted as the wrong type of signal. A response to the test, Jim claims they must adjust the radio waves coming from the. To be safe, they send the radar to the face via a rover. They transmit the radio wave bearing the right answer to the DNA riddle and a white doorway opens up in the face. The rest of the team are reluctant, but Jim convinces them that if they don't do this the entire mission would have been for nothing and everyone who died would have been in vain. Jim, Terry, and Luke make the decision to confront Phil, instructing him to mend the return journey module and depart when whether they return or not, he's finished. Jim, they take off their helmets and enter a 3D model of the solar system, where Mars is depicted as a blue and green planet. The solar system is telling a story about how people once lived on Mars, but a meteor hit the planet and destroyed it. A slender red being then emerges from behind Luke as Terry and Luke enter through the doorway of the face, breaking radio contact with philosophy. Terry and Jim keep telling them the tale of Mars's people to them. Left on spacecraft to travel to live in various galaxies, but one of the ships was abandoned, and the Martians uploaded their DNA information into it. It was this ship that arrived on Earth and brought the first single-celled organisms with it. These organisms later evolved over millions of years into modern humans. Life on Earth actually originated on Mars, The face on Mars was placed there so that one day people from Earth can return and learn where they came from. Ship, and the countdown to its flight has started. Terry and Luke start to walk away. However, Jim claims he will remain here and claims that everything up to this point was an invitation for them to see their Martian ancestors, and he will be leaving since it is what he was meant to do. Terry and Luke consent to releasing Jim. Jim is put into a small spacecraft and placed in a chamber where water is rising, which causes Jim to get concerned and hold his breath. Terry and Luke just about make it to the return journey module in time as Phil is ready to leave. He is eager to travel to a new world as Terry, but as the water comes all the way up, he learns he can somehow breathe in it. He then experiences memories of his entire life with his friends and his wife Maggie. As the return journey module leaves the Mars atmosphere, Phil and Luke witness Jim's spacecraft flying by, carrying him to another galaxy. Knowing that his friend is finally carrying out his destiny, Luke bids Jim luck as the spacecraft departs towards the last frontier of space.